Would you believe it if someone told you that one of the most famous men on the planet was treated like a suspect just because he was dressed simply? That's right. In the heart of Los Angeles, Michael Jordan experienced something that feels like a movie script, but it actually happened. What was supposed to be a regular shopping trip turned into a striking episode of discrimination, surprise, and redemption. While many still believe that fame and fortune protect someone from injustice, Jordan proved that's far from the truth. Kicked out of a luxury store for not fitting the image, he chose to respond in a way no one saw coming. No public outcry, no social media rant. He simply showed up the next day and changed everything. This story will move you, because it's not just about Michael Jordan. It's about all of us, about deceiving appearances, rushed judgments, and the power to turn pain into action. You'll feel inspired, outraged, and maybe, just maybe, you'll look differently at the next stranger you pass by. Oh, and if you love real stories that inspire and make you think, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more coming. That sunny morning in Los Angeles, no one seemed to notice the man walking calmly along the sidewalks of Rodeo Drive. He wore dark jeans, a simple t-shirt, and a cap pulled low over his face. Nothing about him stood out, and that was exactly the point. He wanted to go unnoticed. What few people knew, or rather didn't know, was that the man dressed so casually and without a spotlight was none other than Michael Jordan. One of the greatest names in sports history, just casually out to buy some clothes in peace. Jordan, used to being chased by cameras and fans wherever he went, had come to treasure the rare moments of anonymity. And that day, all he wanted was to pick out a few new items for his wardrobe without interruptions. It wasn't uncommon for him to go shopping alone. He liked the freedom of coming and going like anyone else. No bodyguards, no fanfare, just him and maybe a new jacket or a sharp suit. A normal day, or so he thought. As he pushed open the glass door of the high-end boutique, Jordan felt the blast of cool air hit his face, laced with the expensive scent of cologne and leather. There were few customers, and the staff seemed more focused on adjusting hangers than offering help. He felt relaxed inside, almost invisible. He headed straight to the coat section, running his fingers along the fabrics as if he had all the time in the world, and he truly did. But that sense of peace wouldn't last long. As he examined a dark Italian-cut jacket, he noticed a pair of eyes locked on him from the corner. One of the store clerks was watching him with a look of sheer suspicion, as if Jordan didn't belong there. Jordan pretended not to notice and continued browsing, hoping the discomfort was just in his head. But just a few feet away, fate had already set its trap, and what had started as a casual outing was about to turn into something much heavier. The clerk, young and rigid, finally approached. His posture was stiff, almost militant, like he was preparing to confront. His voice came out low but filled with disdain. "Are you just looking around, or do you plan on buying something? Because this isn't a place to just wander." The sentence, cold and blunt, landed like a punch in the air. Jordan slowly lifted his eyes, surprised, but calm. He didn't even have time to respond. The clerk continued. "Management asked me to let you know that if you're not here to buy, it's better that you leave." It was as if all the respect Michael had earned outside those walls suddenly vanished. And even without being recognized, even without raising his voice, he simply nodded and quietly said, "All right, I'll come back tomorrow." There was no anger in his tone, just a strange kind of peace. Perhaps because in that moment, he already knew exactly what he was going to do. The clerk, unaware of who stood before him, gave a smug half-smile and turned away, thinking he'd solved the problem. Michael left the store with the same calm he had entered, but inside, something had shifted. It wasn't just about bruised pride. It was about something much bigger. It was about injustice, about how people judge others based on appearance, stereotypes, or skin color. And what that clerk didn't know yet was that Jordan's promise to come back tomorrow would bring much more than just a return visit. As the sun disappeared behind the skyscrapers of Los Angeles, inside that luxury store, one man felt pleased with what he saw as just another job well done. The clerk who had confronted Michael the day before had no idea of the impact of his actions. To him, it was just another day following protocol, keeping the environment in order, as he proudly liked to say. The face of that man in the cap didn't even occupy space in his memory. People like that, not looking like buyers, passed by all the time. Or so he thought. What he didn't know was that very night, in a high-rise hotel suite, meetings were taking place. Papers were being passed between lawyers. Phones were buzzing between executives. And one name stood out on all the documents: Michael Jordan. The same man who had been treated like a threat was now orchestrating powerful, discreet negotiations. No shouting, no revenge, just strategy and purpose. The clerk woke up early the next day as usual, put on his freshly pressed white shirt, his shiny name tag, and went to work confident it would be another regular day. He arrived before the store opened, arranged the displays, and gave one last touch to his hair in the hallway mirror. But when he heard the firm footsteps of a group entering through the front door, something inside him shifted. It wasn't the usual morning clientele. They entered together, men and women with leather portfolios, sharp suits, and a posture that spoke louder than any introductions. The store went silent. Employees glanced at one another, confused. Right behind the group walked the man himself. No cap, no casual clothes, no mystery. Michael Jordan, impeccable, elegant, with the calm gaze of someone who had returned, just as he promised. And in that moment, even the air seemed heavier. Time slowed down. He walked confidently to the center of the store, called all the employees, and asked for their attention. In a calm but firm tone, he made the unthinkable announcement. As of today, this store has a new owner. Silence. One of the managers choked on his coffee. The clerk from the day before felt his legs go weak. What? New owner? The same man he had kicked out was now the boss? The shock was immediate. Stunned expressions, hands covering mouths, and hearts pounding so loud they could be heard. The clerk tried to avert his gaze, pretending it wasn't about him. But Jordan, with the elegance of someone who didn't need to raise his voice, approached. Him. It was the moment of truth. The moment life returns every careless choice we make, every judgment made without thought. And then, without pointing fingers, without shouting, Michael looked him in the eyes and said, "Yesterday you judged me by my appearance. Today, I own the place where you work." The silence that followed spoke louder than any speech. The clerk, finally realizing who stood before him, turned pale. The arrogance from the day before evaporated, replaced by shame, embarrassment, and a heartfelt apology that, though sincere, came too late to change the past, but maybe still in time to change the future. The news spread quickly through the store's corridors. Michael Jordan was now the owner. No marketing campaign could have created an impact as powerful as that announcement. And the most impressive thing was how everything had been handled. No drama, no audience, no thirst for revenge. Just a steady presence, almost silent, but impossible to ignore. The staff was still trying to process the information when Michael, with his team assembled, requested an immediate meeting. He didn't just want to own the space. He wanted to transform its soul. Seated in a circle, facing him, the employees' faces revealed a mix of curiosity and fear. Would this be a mass firing? A public reckoning? No one dared to break the silence as Jordan organized his papers. But then, the unexpected happened. Instead of a scolding, Jordan began by talking about his own journey, about the times he was doubted, underestimated, ignored, about how, even as a global icon, he was still judged by what he wore, where he walked, or the color of his skin. The initial tension began to melt into attentive listening. This wasn't a corporate speech, it was a life story. And within his words, there was something even more powerful than surprise: truth. A genuine desire to create change, not just in the store, but in the hearts of the people who worked there. And then, with the same calm he had shown the day before, he looked into everyone's eyes and said, "Here, we start again." He announced that no one would be fired. Not yet. This wasn't about punishment. It was about teaching. But he also made it clear, mistakes would no longer be tolerated. The store would adopt new guidelines, new values, and a new mission. Service rooted in respect, ongoing empathy and inclusion training, and a new culture that would grow from the inside out. From now on, the uniform wouldn't just be clothing, it would be a symbol of what that team stood for. The impact was immediate. Some employees cried, others looked at each other with shame, recognizing past actions now viewed in a new light. That luxury store, once defined by labels and appearances, was about to become a place where every person, no matter who, would be treated with dignity. And the most symbolic part? This change didn't come from the top down, but from someone who had stood on the other side, silently judged. Michael didn't have to do any of this. He could have simply bought, shut down, and demolished the store just to make a point. But he chose the harder path, the path of transformation. And as the meeting ended, just before walking out through the same door he'd nearly been kicked out of the day before, he left one final sentence hanging in the air like a seed. Sometimes it's in the place where we're least respected that we need to leave our mark. And he did. The store that once symbolized exclusion now had everything it needed to become a beacon of growth, redemption, and life-changing transformation. But the story still held one more powerful moment, a final confrontation that would echo in silence once again. The store was still quiet when Michael called over the clerk who had starred in the previous day's incident. The young man, pale and clearly uncomfortable, walked toward him with hesitant steps. He seemed smaller than the day before, as if the weight of his mistake had shrunk his posture. All eyes were on the two of them. This was the moment many had been waiting for, the reckoning. But once again, Jordan surprised everyone. He didn't yell. He didn't humiliate. He didn't even raise his voice. He simply looked the clerk in the eye, calm, steady, and full of meaning. "You judged me by my appearance," he began. "You assumed I didn't belong here. You told me to leave like I was some kind of intruder. Today, I'm the owner of the place where you work." The words, spoken softly, cut through the silence like a sharp blade. There was no hate, just the weight of a truth that didn't need volume to hit hard. The clerk tried to stammer something, maybe a justification, but Jordan gently raised a hand, asking for silence. He wasn't looking for empty excuses. He was looking for change. And that's when he did something no one expected. He gave the man a choice. "You have two options," he said, with the serenity of someone who had already let go of the anger. "You can leave now if you think there's nothing to learn, or you can stay, but you'll have to relearn everything, including what it means to treat people with respect." The atmosphere tensed. The store felt frozen in time. The clerk looked around, maybe hoping for support, maybe trying to understand if this was really happening. But all he found was silence, and the weight of his own conscience. No words of defense would be enough. So he took a deep breath, and with watery eyes did something he hadn't done the day before. He lowered his head and apologized. Sincerely. Jordan accepted the apology with a simple nod. He didn't need more. That moment of humility was already a major step forward. The lesson wasn't about him, Michael, being recognized. It was about learning to see people beyond the surface. It was about humanity. And that moment, witnessed by the entire team, became a turning point. Not just for that employee, but for everyone working there. From that moment on, it wasn't just about selling expensive clothes. It was about valuing people. Michael knew he couldn't change the entire world, but he could change that space. And sometimes, changing one environment is all it takes to spark something bigger. Because when someone with power chooses to forgive instead of punish, and to teach instead of exclude, a space is created where real transformation can begin. The store would no longer be remembered for the incident, but for what came after. For the courage of a man who, despite the injustice he faced, chose to rewrite the story with empathy. But there was still something else that would take this transformation even further. A new purpose for that place. One that would reach beyond its walls and touch those who needed it most. In the days that followed, the luxury store underwent a quiet but profound transformation. It wasn't a physical renovation. The shelves, the mirrors, the expensive hangers all stayed in place. The real change happened in the people. Michael Jordan made it a point to implement mandatory training on respect, diversity, and inclusive customer service. Every employee, from the cashier to the manager, was invited and challenged to rethink their behavior and beliefs. The atmosphere began to shift, lighter, more human. But Michael didn't stop there. A portion of the store's profits was now directed to social projects for at-risk youth. Carefully selected organizations provided training, emotional support, and job opportunities. The place that once judged with a glance now began to embrace by example. And the most amazing part, customers noticed. Many returned not just for the products, but for how they were treated, for the soul of the place. The store unexpectedly became a symbol against discrimination. It was featured in magazines, became the subject of documentaries, and a reference in corporate training sessions. But above all, it became a living reminder that real transformation begins when we choose to do things differently. Michael, who had suffered judgment firsthand, didn't seek recognition. He chose to multiply the respect that had once been denied to him. And even the most skeptical found inspiration in that. One day, an elderly customer approached Jordan, unaware he was the owner, and said, "It's amazing how this place has changed. You can really feel that people care here." He just smiled. He didn't need credit. Just knowing the mission was working was enough. Because the most beautiful thing about real change is when it stops having a face and starts becoming part of a culture, of a collective. The phrase he left on the front door, in small but unmissable letters, said it all. Judging someone by their appearance says more about you than about the person in front of you. It wasn't just a catchy quote. It was a challenge, an invitation to reflection, a silent warning that no one should repeat the same mistake he had experienced on that first day. And so, a bitter experience became a seed of empathy that kept growing, even without Michael's constant presence. He returned to his routines, his projects, his golf games, but he left a piece of himself there. A reminder that even the world's biggest icons still face injustice, and how they respond is what makes them truly great. The store remains open today, but more than just keeping its doors open, it opens eyes. And the story of that man in a cap, mistaken for a threat, continues to be told by those who saw it, those who lived it, and those who learned from it. Because in the end, this isn't just a story about clothes or celebrities. It's a story about what really matters when all the labels come off. Respect. How many times have you judged someone just by their appearance? Maybe without realizing it, maybe by habit. But what if, on the other side, was someone with an incredible story, a past full of struggles, or simply a kind heart waiting for respect? The truth is, we never know who's standing in front of us. It could be a millionaire disguised in simplicity, or someone who just needs a little kindness to have the best day of their life. And when Michael Jordan chose the path of respect, he didn't just respond with class. He gave us a life lesson. So tell me, would you have done the same? Would you have returned to teach instead of humiliate? Would you have turned pain into change? If this story touched you in any way, drop a comment below. What would you have done in his place? And of course, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because there are still many more incredible, human, and unexpected stories to share with you.